I was listening to the 1986 version of Walk This Way this morning, and it hit me. I've heard the song on the radio, in movies, at sporting events for my entire life, but I never actually paid close attention to the drums.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, and when I really focus on them today, I realized they don't sound like real physical drums at all. Like, am I crazy, or is there something weird going on with percussion there?
You are absolutely not crazy. What you're picking up on is a complete and honestly like a radical sonic re-engineering by producer Rick Rubin.
Okay, so what did he actually do?
Well, when Rubin set out to produce this remake, he took the original 1975 drum track, which was played by Aerosmith's drummer Joey Kramer, and he literally threw it in the trash.
Wait, he just tossed the original acoustic drums entirely? Why? I mean, Kramer is a legend.
He is a legend. But Kramer's original part was this beautiful organic acoustic kit. It breathed, it had this natural human push and pull, a real swing to it.
Right, and Rubin didn't want that.
No, Rubin didn't want swing. He wanted force. So he completely discarded it, and in its place, he dropped in the militaristic 8-bit precision of a programmed Oberheim DMX drum machine.
Wow. So he just swapped a human for a machine.
Exactly. He took something that was fundamentally human and forced it onto a rigid, mathematically perfect grid.
Okay, stop right there. For someone who doesn't spend their life in a recording studio, what does it actually mean to force a drum beat onto a grid? Like, what does that do to the sound?
So it's a process called quantizing. Think of it like taking a highly expressive, slightly messy, handwritten sentence and forcing every single letter to snap perfectly into the tiny, rigid boxes of a spreadsheet.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So you lose all that human variation.
Right. All the slight imperfections that make it feel alive are just erased. The DMX drum machine doesn't care about feeling. It just fires perfectly on time, every single time. It's aggressive and, frankly, unyielding.
That is wild, because the beat feels almost like a weapon in that 1986 version. And what's crazy is that the reality of trying to execute that exact sound in the studio was pure chaos.
Oh, it was a mess.
Yeah, I was looking through some session notes, and on March 9th, 1986, they are in this stripped-down, bare-bones studio in Manhattan. And right in the middle of the session, Rubin realizes there is a massive problem.
Right, because the track is sitting entirely on this cold drum machine, and it desperately needs a physical bass line to anchor it, to give it some actual human weight.
Exactly. But the punchline is that nobody actually brought the right instruments to the studio. They don't even have a single bass guitar in the room.
Which is just hilarious when you think about who was in that room.
I know.
Yeah.
So Adam Yauch, MCA from the Beastie Boys, who just happened to be hanging around the session that day, has to literally sprint out of the studio. He runs all the way back to his apartment just to grab his personal bass guitar.
Just a casual errand for a Beastie Boy.
Right. He grabs it, sprints back, just so Joe Carey can physically plug it in and play the part.
It is the ultimate snapshot of 1980s New York.
Huh.
I mean, you have a bona fide 1970s rock god just standing around waiting for a 20-something punk-turned rapper to fetch an instrument so they can finish a beat.
But that chaotic, forced collision is where the absolute magic happens, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Because on paper, it sounds like a complete disaster.
How so? Like, why does it work?
It works because of the friction. When Joe Perry finally layers his analog, blues scale lead guitar riffs over that DMX drum beat, something entirely new is born.
Because the guitar wants to do one thing and the drums are doing another.
Exactly. A blues lead guitar naturally wants to float, bend, and swing. But Rubin traps that swinging guitar inside the unyielding, quantized electronic cage of the drum machine.
Wow, so they're literally fighting each other on the track.
Yes. And the push and pull between the human guitar and the robot drums created the exact sonic blueprint that ended up defining the entire nu metal movement.
No way. Really?
Oh, absolutely. We are talking about the foundational DNA for bands like Linkin Park, Korn, and Rage Against the Machine. It all traces back to the friction of that specific session. Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking.
We are going to explore the factual and the mythological history of how Walk This Way tore down the walls between two entirely different American musical universes.
It's a huge story.
It really is. We're looking at historical audits, musicology, and original industry records to figure out how this, frankly, impossible crossover actually happened.
And to really grasp the explosion of that collision, you have to understand how fundamentally opposed the rock and hip-hop landscapes were in the mid-1980s.
Right, they weren't exactly hanging out at the same parties.
Not at all. These weren't just two different styles of music, they were two entirely different realities. Let's look at Aerosmith first. In the mid-1970s, they were the undisputed kings of American hard rock.
Selling out stadiums, massive hits, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. But by 1985, the wheels had completely fallen off.
Yeah, I saw the tour numbers from that era. It was grim.
Beyond grim. I mean, they were broke. They were playing to half-empty arenas and secondary markets. The creative spark was completely extinguished by severe substance abuse.
Right. Steven Tyler and Joe Perry weren't called the Toxic Twins for nothing.
Exactly. They tried to make a comeback in 1985 with an album called Done with Mirrors, and it was a total commercial disaster. They were widely considered a decaying legacy act that had just missed their window.
Okay, let's unpack this. Aerosmith was like a decaying, opulent, analog mansion falling apart from the inside, while Run-DMC was a stark, brutalist concrete tower built on the street.
That is a great visual.
Thanks. Because over in Hollis, Queens, Run-DMC is busy inventing an entirely new future. But it wasn't the kind of hip-hop that came before them, right?
Not at all. Early hip-hop records, like the Sugar Hill Gang, they usually relied on these flamboyant live disco funk bands to provide the backing tracks. Run-DMC looked at that and completely rejected it.
Right. If early rap was a luxury sedan loaded up with heavy disco funk modifications, leather seats, flashy rims, a massive sound system, Run-DMC essentially dragged that car into a garage and stripped it down to the bare metal chassis.
Yeah, they ripped out the seats, they tossed the rims.
And all they left was a massive, roaring engine.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
Their engine was purely minimal. Hard-hitting electronic drum machines, a DJ scratching vinyl, and aggressive vocals.
It was a total rejection of the disco era.
Completely. And they built a visual aesthetic to match that refusal. Unlaced Adidas Superstars, black leather jackets, fedoras. They weren't trying to sound like a 1970s funk band. They were trying to sound like the concrete streets of Queens.
But how did these two completely different architectures even find each other to collide? What's the connective tissue?
Well, the secret is that the connection wasn't some random corporate marketing scheme. The 1975 original version of Walk This Way secretly contained the rhythmic DNA of a hip-hop track all along.
Wait, really? It was always a hip-hop track?
In its bones, yes. It just took a decade for anyone to realize it.
Okay, I love this. Take me back. How did that 1975 original even come together?
The genesis goes back to December 1974. Aerosmith is at a sound check before a show in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Just a casual soundtrack in paradise.
Right. And Joe Perry's just messing around on his guitar, and he starts playing this highly syncopated riff.
Okay, you're gonna have to translate syncopated for me.
Sure.
Mhm.
Syncopation is when you emphasize the offbeats. So instead of playing a note squarely on the 1, 2, 3, 4 count, like a simple nursery rhyme, you play notes in the spaces between those numbers.
Oh, okay. So it kind of keeps you guessing.
Exactly. It catches the ear by surprise. Perry was heavily inspired by the rhythmic funk of bands like the Meters and James Brown. So this wasn't a standard rock and roll chord progression. It was built like a funk groove from the very first note.
Got it. So they have this funky instrumental, but they obviously need lyrics. And the story of how Steven Tyler wrote them is amazing.
Oh, it's wild.
They are back in New York at the Record Plant studio. Tyler is desperately trying to write words to match Perry's weird funk rhythm, but he doesn't even have a notebook.
Right. He's totally unprepared.
Yeah, he literally takes a pencil into the stairwell of the studio and frantically writes these rapid-fire percussive lyrics directly onto the plaster wall.
And that physical urgency translates into how he sings it. He doesn't sing a sweeping melody. He treats his voice like a drum. He spits out syllables just to match the syncopation of Perry's guitar.
Which is exactly why early hip-hop DJs latched onto it. I was reading about how pioneering Bronx DJs like Grandmaster Flash treated that specific record.
They loved it.
They did, but they didn't care about the singing or the guitar solo. They only cared about Joey Kramer's drum intro right at the beginning of the song.
Right, because Kramer's drum intro was incredibly pocketed.
Okay, another music term. What does it mean for a drum beat to be in the pocket?
When a drummer plays in the pocket, it means they aren't just playing like a robotic metronome. They might hit the snare drum just a microscopic fraction of a second behind the actual beat.
Oh, so it creates a sort of drag.
Yeah, it creates a tension, a swagger,
Yeah.
that literally commands your body to nod along. Kramer's mix of a choke hi-hat cymbal and a syncopated kick drum was so perfectly pocketed that DJs would buy 2 copies of the record.
Just to play that one part.
Exactly. They'd isolate that 3-second drum intro and scratch them back and forth to create an endless loop. They called it a breakbeat.
And what's so funny to me is that the grooves on the physical vinyl record were physically shallow right at that intro because it's at the very beginning of the song.
Oh, right, making it easy to spot.
Yeah, so DJs could easily drop the needle right on the exact spot in the dark. Run-DMC actually grew up rhyming over this exact beat in park jams.
But the crazy part is, they had absolutely no idea who Aerosmith was.
None whatsoever.
Right. In the Bronx and Queens, DJs would literally scratch the paper labels off their vinyl records, so rival DJs couldn't steal their secret beats.
That's so smart. Protect the stash.
Exactly. So to Run-DMC, this track wasn't called Walk This Way by Aerosmith. It was simply known as number 4 on Toys in the Attic, because it was the 4th track on the album.
They just counted the rings on the vinyl.
Yep. They had never even listened past the drum intro to hear Tyler's vocals.
Wait, if they already loved the beat and used it constantly, why did they notoriously hate the idea of covering the song when Rick Rubin suggested it?
Well, because loving a drum break to freestyle your own rhymes over is very, very different from being asked to rap the lyrics of a white classic rock band.
Fair point.
When Rick Rubin finally played the full Aerosmith track for them in the studio, Run-DMC absolutely hated it. They famously called Tyler's rapid-fire delivery Hillbilly Gibberish.
Hillbilly Gibberish, that is brutal, but you can kind of see their point.
Oh, absolutely.
They were terrified that covering a 70s rock song would completely alienate their core hip-hop audience. They thought they'd look like sellouts making a desperate grab for white pop radio.
Exactly. It was actually Jam Master Jay, their DJ, who had to intervene and save the session.
What did he do?
He realized they were getting hung up on the words themselves, so he forced them to sit down and listen to the underlying rhythm of Tyler's lyrics.
Oh, taking the rock out of it.
Right. He stripped away the rock context and translated it into percussive math. He made them understand Tyler's vocal delivery as a rhyme scheme, a structure that they could conquer and dominate with their own hip-hop flow.
Which brings us to the actual recording session at Magic Venture Studios on March 9th, 1986. The cultural friction in that room is almost palpable.
It was thick.
You have Aerosmith, who are basically doing this for a flat fee of $8,000 because they desperately need the cash. And the misunderstanding between the two camps is staggering.
It really is. Aerosmith, who at this point are still heavily intoxicated and struggling with addiction, look over and see the Run-DMC guys huddled intensely together over a brown paper bag.
Oh, no.
Yeah, given Aerosmith's own lifestyle, they immediately assume these kids from Queens must be doing something illicit, smoking crack, hiding drugs.
But they weren't. They were literally just eating McDonald's Big Macs out of a takeout bag.
It's hilarious.
It perfectly highlights how completely alien these two worlds were to each other. But then they finally get into the vocal booth. And this is where I need you to explain the mechanics to me, because what Run and DMC do to Tyler's vocals is fascinating.
It's brilliant. Run and DMC took Tyler's sliding bluesy rock melody and completely chopped it up. They turned it into this highly structured, antiphonal, staccato rap trade-off.
Okay, antiphonal, break that down for me. What are they actually doing with their voices?
Antiphonal just means a call and response. Imagine two preachers trading lines from a pulpit, but doing it at lightning speed.
Okay, I can hear that.
Run would take one line in this high, urgent, almost yelling register, and DMC would immediately answer the next line in his deep, booming baritone.
And it locks in perfectly.
Yes, and they didn't just sing it, they locked every single syllable perfectly to the second and fourth beats of that rigid DMX snare drum we talked about earlier. They took a rock and roll melody and beat it into a strict, militant hip-hop cadence.
And Steven Tyler's just watching this happen through the studio class, totally mesmerized. He eventually jumps in to deliver that soaring, screaming rock chorus.
Which creates such an incredible contrast.
The contrast between the rigid rap verses and his screaming chorus is unbelievable.
What's fascinating here is how Rick Rubin handled that contrast in the final mix of the song. Usually, a producer wants to blend everything smoothly so it sounds cohesive.
Right, make it sound like one band.
But Rubin did the exact opposite. He left the seams showing on purpose.
What do you mean by leaving the seams showing?
Well, in audio engineering, you have dry sounds and wet sounds. A dry sound has no echo. It sounds like the person is standing right in front of your face.
Okay.
A wet sound is soaked in reverb, making it sound like it's being sung in a massive stadium. Rubin placed the incredibly dry, in-your-face hip-hop versus right up against Tyler's extremely wet, reverb-heavy stadium rock chorus.
Oh, wow. So they sound like they're in two different rooms.
Exactly. By doing that, he proved this was a raw collision of two different worlds, not just a smoothed-over, focus-grouped corporate fusion.
Wow. He wanted you to hear the collision, but capturing that sonic collision on a cassette tape was only half the battle.
It was just step one.
To actually break into the mainstream and change the culture, they had to conquer the visual realm. And in 1986, that meant they had to fight MTV.
And MTV in 1986 was an incredibly stubborn gatekeeper. It was a rock-focused network, and its playlist was overwhelmingly segregated and white.
It was incredibly hard to get on there.
Right. Black artists, let alone hip-hop artists, had an incredibly difficult time getting any airplay whatsoever.
Right. So the video director, John Small, comes up with this incredibly on-the-nose concept. Two bands set up in adjacent rehearsal rooms, separated by a thin wall, deeply annoyed by each other's sheer volume.
It was a literal, physical representation of a demographic wall in the music industry.
So literal. But when John Small initially pitched a rap video to MTV executives, their answer was just a flat nope, absolute refusal.
Not interested at all.
But here's where the Trojan horse element comes in. The physical presence of Joe Perry and Steven Tyler, two established white rock legends, it created a corporate leverage that MTV executives simply couldn't ignore.
They had to play it.
So they get the green light and they go to shoot this video in Union City, New Jersey. And I found this detail hilarious. They specifically chose New Jersey to keep the Aerosmith guys away from their drug dealers in Manhattan.
A very practical production choice.
Very. But only Tyler and Perry even bothered to show up for the shoot. The rest of Aerosmith's rhythm section wasn't there, so the production team literally hired a local glam metal band called Smash Gladys to put on wigs and stand in as the rest of the band.
It was a wildly chaotic shoot, and the crowd dynamic for the final concert scene perfectly mirrored the cultural tension of the song itself.
Oh, the concert scene is amazing.
Yeah, the production team advertised a free Aerosmith concert on local radio to get bodies in the room. What happened? A massive crowd of about 5,000 young black hip-hop fans showed up for Run-DMC.
And the white rock fans who arrived were completely intimidated.
Right. The rock fans literally refused to get out of their cars.
I can't even imagine being the production crew dealing with that.
The crew had to literally walk through the parking lot, knock on car windows, and assure the white rock fans it was safe, sneaking them through the back door of the venue just so they can visually mix the audience for the MTV cameras.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you watch that music video, there is that iconic moment where Steven Tyler takes his microphone stand and physically rams it through the drywall, separating the two bands.
Everyone remembers that shot.
When you understand the context of MTV's refusal and the segregation in the parking lot, that wasn't just a cool visual gag. Tyler was literally shattering the demographic wall between the rock chart and the rap chart. He was breaking down the programming segregation of American media in real time.
And once that drywall shattered on MTV, the commercial and cultural shockwaves completely reorganized the American music industry.
I mean, the numbers alone are staggering.
They are. The track shot up the charts and peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became the very first rap record to ever crack the top 5.
That's huge.
And it pushed Run-DMC's album Raising Hell to become the first multi-platinum hip-hop album in history.
And on the other side, that $8,000 studio session literally saved Aerosmith's career.
It absolutely revived them.
Suddenly, this washed-up 70s band is exposed to a massive new youth audience that thinks they're incredibly cool. It gave Tyler and Perry the leverage, the money, and the motivation to enter rehab, get sober, and launch an absolute juggernaut of an arena comeback.
Yeah, their next album, Permanent Vacation, sold 5 million copies.
Incredible.
But beyond the sales figures, it's really about the cultural permission that this one song granted to the rest of the world. Walk This Way proved that rock and rap weren't just culturally compatible, but structurally compatible.
Lay down the blueprint.
Right. That specific formula, a heavy lead guitar layered over a quantized aggressive hip-hop beat, became a permanent fixture. It led directly to the Beastie Boys' masterpiece, License to Ill.
Which was huge.
Exactly. It paved the way for the political fury of Rage Against the Machine. And as we discussed, it mapped the entire DNA for the nu metal generation.
So, what does this all mean for you today? Why does a session from 1986 still matter? It matters because when you hear a country singer topping a hip-hop chart today, or you see a rapper putting out a country album without anyone batting an eye, you are living in the genre-fluid universe that opened the exact moment Steven Tyler's mic stand went through that plaster wall.
It's all connected.
It proved that the most important boundary in music isn't the line between genres. It's the line between the willingness to collide with something new and the fear of it.
It absolutely changed the landscape forever. But, if we connect this to the broader historical picture, it leaves us with a really challenging thought to chew on.
What's that?
While we rightfully celebrate the 1986 version of Walk This Way as a triumphant moment of musical integration, consider the underlying irony of how it happened. For a revolutionary, distinctly black art form to get its institutional due on MTV and pop radio, it couldn't just walk through the front door on its own merits.
Right, it needed help.
It was forced to use a Trojan horse strategy. It had to wrap itself in a decades-old white rock song and seek the literal physical validation of classic rock stars just to get on the airwaves.
Wow. That's a heavy realization.
It is. It makes you wonder, what does that say about the uncomfortable, often asymmetrical compromises that are required to achieve true cultural transformation?
If you like this episode, please support the show by liking and subscribing.